Welcome to Unlocking Human Potential with me, Andy Hosgood, a show dedicated to exploring what it really takes psychologically, behaviourally and practically to help humans thrive through conversations with leaders, founders, coaches, behavioural experts and people shaping how humans perform and grow. Is this for you? But if you're a leader, a founder, a business owner or an ambitious professional who wants to do more than just perform, they want to grow, inspire and bring the best out in themselves and their people, then keep listening, because the mission is simple: to explore how individuals and teams unlock potential in themselves, in others and the organisations they shape. Every episode is a deep but relaxed conversation built around three core questions. How do you optimise yourself? How do you unlock potential in others? And the best advice for you, the listener. Now over to the episode. Really hope you find it helpful and insightful. Just before we introduce our next guest, please make sure you press the follow button to keep updated with the latest episodes. Additionally, special thanks to 246 Photography and Pixel Made Brands for making this podcast a reality. Now over to the episode. Steph, welcome.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you very much for joining me today. And we're in the studio that you recommended, so this is awesome. So thank you very much for this. It's brilliant. So, our guest today, what happens when someone stops chasing healthy and starts looking at what helps them to truly live well? Today's guest, let me get my teeth back in, Steph Hardcastle, a health and wellness coach whose work focuses on helping women in midlife reduce stress, improve energy and create health changes that actually last. What I really like about Steph's approach is she cuts through the noise, no extreme fixes, no perfection culture, no pretending life isn't busy and complicated. Her work is grounded in real life well-being, helping people understand the link between stress, nutrition, sleep, hormones, and everyday habits that impact what they think, feel and function. Steph's own path into health coaching is shaped by both professional and lived experience. A linguist initially, Steph went onto a career of marketing and communications, running her own business in Australia. But after navigating the pressures of becoming a single parent with a child with additional needs, she became deeply interested in what helps people regain a sense of control with their health and lives. In this conversation, we explore the human side of health, the relationship between pressure, purpose, and behavioural change, and what it takes to make change happen in real life. Because knowing what to do is one thing, having the clarity and consistency and the confidence to live it is something entirely else. The truth is, high performance means nothing if your health is constantly pushed to the bottom of the list. So if you're running on adrenaline, feeling stretched thin, or wondering why you don't quite feel yourself anymore, then this conversation is going to resonate. It made me really think a lot when I was, kind of putting this together. So I'm really, really looking forward to the depth of the conversation that we're going to have today. I think partly led by the conversations that we've had an awful lot on this podcast around how people have come to the understanding that putting health first has come to them later in life through, maybe not always good experiences. So I think it's really important conversation that we're going to have, and I'm really looking to explore this with you, because I think you're right. I think people do put it down the list of them and fail to look after themselves and fail to look after their own health. So
yeah, they do, because we're all human, aren't we?
Yeah,
we're all human, and everything else gets in the way, and we don't have the time, the resources, anything to put into ourselves at some stage in our life.
No, I think it is. So I think there's a lot. Hopefully there's going to be a lot of lessons that resonate with the audience today, and there's going to be lots of action points that we can, then people can take.
Yeah, I think so. But I think that we talk about lessons, but actually we already know what we need to do. So I think it's not about telling people more or giving people more information. It's about helping them to make the change. So it's about bridging that gap between information and actually making the change.
So that's maybe where we can spend a lot of the time exploring of how people kind of take action.
Yeah.
Which is good, because a lot of this podcast is around that, isn't it? I think talk is talk is certainly something that a lot of people are good at, and I think like you've said, I think I agree. I think we're especially in a world now with information abundance, aren't we?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So actually what we do with that information, how we take action, is cool.
And we absorb it, don't we? We go online and we look at all the influencers, and the influencers are saying you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And so you get this overload of, oh gosh, I should be doing this, and I'm not doing well enough. I'm not doing the things I should be doing. So then it feeds a bit of a negative cycle, doesn't it? But actually what you need to be knowing is how to do it. What do you need to do in terms of the things that you're telling yourself, in terms of what you'd shape in your environment that actually makes the change.
And is that what is the kind of that whole health coach, that's the coaching part of it, helping people kind of almost, we've all got the knowledge within us, but actually what we do with that and how we do that, rather than telling, it's people working out their own journeys. Is that my interpretation of the coaching part?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's coaching, isn't it? Coaching is not prescribing. It's not telling somebody what to do. It's helping them see the right path, because everybody has that information inside them. Everybody knows, really. If you start to talk to somebody and let them open up, and you make a really safe space for them, they're going to start to talk to you about what's really going on in their lives. And even though they know that themselves, they might not actually have grasped it. They might not have found that, that really important point that is the thing that will move them on to better and bigger things. So it's about opening up that conversation, and then it's about guiding them to better solutions, which you know that very well. It's the fundamentals of coaching. It's not dwelling on what's happened, what's caused that trauma, what's caused that problem. It's okay, we acknowledge that, but then we're moving forward, and we're going to make changes. Nice.
And I think both of us, one of the things we talked off air, and I think where we're both very strong at is keeping that non-judgmental space, isn't it?
Yeah.
And hopefully we can keep it on ourselves as we go through this, because that's the other challenge, isn't it? That we judge ourselves quite heavily.
Yeah. And actually, one of the things that I find really inspiring is unconditional positive regard.
Nice.
And I think that that's so important. It's something that we learn. And something you don't realize in your own life so much until you really stop and think about it, that you approach people completely without judgment, and in a coaching context, that means that you sit down with them, you have absolutely no judgment about them as a person, about what the story is that they're telling you, and they then feel safe, they then feel able to talk to you about all the things that they need to talk to you.
No,
it's
definitely.
really important.
No, I love it. Can we just we always start with curiosity with this, and I'm gonna kind of take a curveball.
Okay.
A little bit. Just hopefully it's not too much of a curveball for my structure, is ask you a curious question. So I'm familiar with the kind of the role a health coach plays, but it is quite a new role within some people's awareness. Could you just expand a little bit about what a role of a health coach does?
Yeah, it's interesting really, because it isn't very well known within the UK. It's quite a new profession, really. Very big in the US, less big here. So I know that in 2020 there were 60 health coaches in the UK. Okay. So small numbers, right? By last year that had gone up to about 1,200.
Right, okay.
So big increase, but knowledge hasn't expanded alongside it. And I guess what I'm curious about is what will it take to make health coaching part of the mainstream conversation about health? And I think what's happening within the NHS is really quite important, and that is that they're recognising health coaching, but then they're still not making it a big part of the NHS provision. So they are also having to explain what it is, because it's different it's a different approach to what they had before, because health coaching is more preventative. Whereas what the NHS usually deals with is having to mop up after something's happened, I guess. And what that leads into really nicely is lifestyle medicine, which is something that Rangan Chatterjee is really, really big on, and he's been a big proponent of that school of thought, really. And that is that the changes that you make to your health are the things that will stop you becoming ill or will reduce the impact of things like diabetes, heart disease, things like that. And that's what the NHS is now recognising, and health coaches are now part of the NHS.
Nice. Okay.
But it is still not something that's widely recognised. And I think often part of my work in talking to potential clients is education, is having to say, why does this approach work? What is this approach? How is it new? How does it help me? And I know that I was at a wellness fair at the weekend, and whilst I was waiting for people to come into my talk, I just talked to the people that were there and said, can I just ask, just out of curiosity, do you know what a health coach is? Nobody did.
Okay.
Which is quite astonishing, really, because it is established, it is important, but it's, I guess people are just not getting enough exposure to it to know. So
hopefully we can help with this as well.
Yes,
can't we?
yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
So I one of the things I've just hearing that and listening, it's, we're trying to take a more proactive and less reactive approach to our health. Yeah. Because I think you're right. I think, majority of people are, when we feel unwell, we think, we need to do something about it. From my background as a healthcare professional, as a physio, is people would come to you when they're in pain, rather than going, okay, so what could you have done to keep this at bay, or things, and reoccurring. So I think it's really important conversation of one. I'm actually quite excited now to get delved into this because I think that, I see it from a place where, what resonates with me, and I'll share this with you. So I'm the kind of person that gets my bloods done because I'm going, okay, so where am I? I supplement quite well. My diet and nutrition, my training, all a part of that. I monitor my sleep, I calorie track, I do all these things because I want to be the best version of me. One, how to determine the best version to turn up as being a dad, which is I see my primary role. I happen to have a few other jobs as well and projects I'm involved in. But how do I get the best version of me so people see the best version of me? But also, how do I be the best version of me in my 80s, 90s and 100s? And I'm making that decision in my 40s because I think by the time I get to that point, it's too late. So that proactive approach really resonates with me. And I know when you reached out, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to like this because it's something that sits close to me. So
yeah, but I think that's great for you. That's you're able to do that, and that's where your mindset is right now. But for so many people, they're not there yet, and that can feel quite daunting. What you're already achieving is a lot, right?
Yeah.
So if people start small, they can get to where they want to go, and they shouldn't necessarily have such a big goal that it's not helpful. So if people are thinking of changing their health, then it does start really, really small. And I know, when I was younger, I just used to push through, talking about what we can change. And I wasn't thinking about my health because I was really healthy. I was I'd push through. That was just what I did. If something wasn't quite right, talking about what people coming into your physio thing, if they'd have come to you earlier. But as you get older and as life hits you, you don't recover as quickly, and you start to notice the impact of stress in particular, that compounds, and that really creates, it wreaks havoc with your whole body. It's not just a mental thing, stress. It actually has a physical impact as well. And that's the point really, where before that causes the damage that it can, and it has with me, I've experienced that. You need to be aware of the signs, and a lot of this work is talking about awareness, I guess, being aware of what's happening to you, being aware of what your body's telling you long before it starts to shut down.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. And is that where the education part that you said, a lot of the work you do is around education? Is that
well, the education part is really in saying what health coaches do, in saying what the approach is, and why it benefits you and how it's helpful. But of course, health coaching is also education, because a lot of people, whilst a lot of people do know what they have to do, a lot of people don't necessarily know. And in fact, I was speaking to somebody at the weekend, and he said that he has a problem. He just wants sweet cake.
Okay.
And he said he does everything. He trains really, really well, does everything he needs to do, eats loads of protein, but he just wants sweet cake in the afternoon.
Okay.
So we delved a bit deeper, and you'd think that, he knows what to do. Great. Why is that happening? It turned out that his breakfast was a banana. Okay. Well, I know that that's not a great breakfast.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Yeah.
So he knows a lot,
Yeah.
but that one little thing he didn't really know about. And so the education part of it is making people aware of the things that they can do to change their health.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So the podcast is kind of in 3. So for new listeners, or just to kind of share, we're going to try and, I think already people have got a flavour for what we're going to talk about, so it's great. But the unlocking human potential for me comes in 3 things. How do we get the best out of ourselves? And so I'd like to kind of explore that with you. And then how do we get the best out of others? And what we do with that. So again, maybe the role as a coach, how that role plays out to help other people. And then I think if people have listened to us for an hour, I know we'll probably have a really good conversation, but I always think it's not always that obvious when we listen to conversations. Okay, so what can I do with this? So what we'll try and do at the end is try and pull it together so we can go, okay, so, what actions, like you said, what can people actually be doing to make maybe the smallest of habit that people could start today? We might even set the audience, we will be setting the audience some challenges to try and, because I think it's important, like you've said. I think we are in a world of knowledge, but actually then how do we, what we've certainly found with the podcast is by just setting some little challenges and for people to just choosing to explore those and actually seeing those small little changes and what they feel like for them. It makes the impossible possible, or it makes that first step to go and actually this is something I can do. Yeah. If it's moving from a banana to actually, some toast in a banana or a bit of porridge in a banana, then those little steps in a direction there. So
yeah, and I can set up a challenge on my website. That would be no problem at all. They can get somebody to follow that. Yeah,
perfect. So when we talk around optimizing ourselves and unlocking our own potential, where does that land with you in the world that you do?
Oh my gosh, I think so. I'd always been quite healthy, quite fit. I lived in Australia for quite a long time. Nice. So that's quite a healthy place, right? I think, I think for me, it was about taking control back and finding my purpose.
Okay.
So optimizing myself is living by the things that I teach. That's really important. But also finding my purpose, because you talked earlier about being a parent, and being a parent can be all consuming, and you sacrifice a lot, and you do that gladly, you do that happily. And when you're a parent of a special needs child, I think when you're a standard parent, there's a point where it shifts a little bit, and you can start to look at yourself a little bit more again. And when you're a special needs parent, I think that shift doesn't always come as easily, because there are always needs. And I think that there was a lot going on. I went through quite a lot of stressful life events all at the same time. There were a lot of difficulties with my son's school, which became had quite an impact on me. And I think when all that happens, you just become overwhelmed with it. There's at no point are you looking at what should I be eating right now, or I must go out and have a walk. I must just meditate for a few minutes, or I must just have some time in the garden, because that's just not even possible. It's not even there. And I think for me, stress caused so many problems. My hair fell out. I got reflux. I got IBS. I got lots of things happening with my body that weren't good. Cortisol everywhere. Right. And I think it's only when you allow yourself the time and the understanding to say, this isn't okay anymore, it's not okay for this to be my normal, that you step back and you look at what actually you need in life. And one of the things that I realised that I needed, my son was older, he was settled, I knew that he was doing okay. And for the first few years as a special needs parent, that's not often it's not often a given, really, because you're fighting a lot. You're battling to get help and support, and just to help them progress, really. But there was a point for me. There was a tipping point where I said, okay, what do I need? I'd always had, a good life. I'd been all over the world. I'd lived all over the world, different places. I'd run my own business. I'd been out and about. I'd been networking, and my life had become really, really small. So it was about finding purpose. I didn't know that at the time necessarily, but I knew that I needed something that I could make mine, and it was really strange, actually, because I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew I didn't want to do marketing anymore. I knew that wasn't my world anymore, because your perspectives change. You've got a special person. You're not really interested in, how am I going to sell somebody's biscuits? That's or insurance products. That's not it. And I think that I just wanted to help people. And my first thought was that I'd help people with autism. Or people affected by autism. But that was too close to home. And then I was looking at some magazines one day, and picked up a magazine, and there was an advertisement for a health coaching course. And I read it through, and I went, that is everything I've been looking for, but I didn't know it existed. It's amazing. Rang them, and the course was starting the next day. And I just jumped on. And for me, that was everything. It pivoted. Everything changed, because it was everything. It was the health side of things. It was the mental side of things. It was the helping side of things. And the importance of it is so great. And also just how much it changed my life. Yeah.
I can feel that.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about it. I love it. I love it, yeah.
And it's something that I picked up on, and I'm going to bring it up, and if you feel comfortable going in with it, then, and if not, we can move on. You used the word allowed yourself. So there was almost like a point where you, because of the role you play as the parent, there was a permission you almost gave yourself. It felt like you used the word, you said, allowed myself to think, or allowed myself to start thinking differently.
About myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you do have to allow yourself, because you almost have to give yourself permission, because everything in you is about the child.
Yeah.
And quite rightly.
Yeah.
But you also have to say, but this is, I have a life. This is my life. And if I'm not showing up in the right way, then I'm not showing up the best way for my child either. And it was about long-term health as well. It's about being here for him. And that what more powerful motivator can you have?
The reason why I did it, I don't know if you reckon, but when you said that, there was a shift in you.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, and it just went, there was a shift, and then you went, and then you said, I found this thing, and then I could just feel the energy shift. And I think, that it was lovely to witness, and that I just thought, that's why I just thought I'd bring it back in, because I thought it was and it's quite a nice thing to hear, I think, because I think people don't give themselves permission to be something different. We play a role, and it must be challenging. Well, I don't know, so I can't, so it must be a very challenging when, like you say, you can't even have a minute to yourself. So there must, to have that moment where you can, if there's a realization of going, okay, well, actually, for me to be the person I want to be, for my child, I need to.
But I think it's about balance as well. I think, I choose to run my own business, but that also has benefits, because I have flexibility. And flexibility is so important in my life. It's allowed me to do so much that I wouldn't have been able to do had I been in employment. I wouldn't have been able to do half the things that I've done for him and for us. I think it can be all consuming, but it's also amazingly rewarding, because you have a child that is so special, so talented, so incredible, and in some ways, and it was said to me, it's been said before, it's a privilege to take them on that journey, because they don't have a disability, they have a different ability, and I think you ask about curiosity, and one of the things that I'm curious about is, when will people learn to realize that it isn't that, and not treat people as if they have disabilities, but as if they have different abilities, you know. That becomes more our norm.
I like that. I think that's a nice reframed of it, isn't it, for people?
Yeah. You know, and when I have the conversation with my son, it's you know, it's always about what he can. It's amazing. It has amazing skills, you know, and his superpower is making people happy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I always said that to him, because he does. He's a joy, right?
Yeah.
He lights up the room. So it's about it's about messaging, isn't it? It's about how you reframe things.
Yeah.
But that's so important in coaching as well, because you have to help people reframe the way that they talk to themselves and the negative self-talk, you know.
And I love the fact that you've framed it in a way that you've almost named it a superpower. I think it's I love that, and that resonates with people of all ages. You know, even adults. If you say, well, "Is that your superpower?" They kind of maybe you know, we can stand behind that, can't we?
Yeah,
I like that. So, what do you feel then? You know, moving into this health coaching thing, and you know, and it was lovely watching you just smile when you were talking about it, and obviously moving into that reminiscing of going, and I was booked on it the next day. I thought it resonated so much. So for kind of people listening who are, you know, maybe don't feel optimal all of the time, they might not have the challenges you faced, but they might have their own challenges in the world, and whatever that might look like for them. Where does like health coaching and what you do help kind of get the best out of, or what could they be doing to kind of get the best out of themselves?
Well, they're two different questions, aren't they? So one, if you want to get the best out of yourself, you've got to be honest with yourself, I think, haven't you? You've got to look at what you think is not working in your life. And I think one of the most important things is looking to see how you can get control back as well, because often things will take our power, if you like. If we feel that we're not in control, then we feel like we can't influence anything about our health either, because we're lacking authority over anything. We're lacking agency, aren't we? And I think you know, the people are most successful at making change when they believe that they are responsible for the change around them, and people are less likely to be able to change if they believe that external forces are the things that are creating the problems. So, you know, if I made this improvement, that would work, and we'd get some advancements. But if you say, well, it's because that's not working over there and they keep doing that, then you're not gonna make as many improvements, because you're shifting the responsibility for your own change, aren't you?
So it starts with self and responsibility of self, and almost the accountability of what you can control. Is that what we're saying?
In a way, but I think that comes further down the track. I think first of all, it's being prepared to be honest with yourself. I think accountability and being aware of what it is that's happen a little bit later on. I think you've got to be really gentle with yourself at first.
I like that.
It's really important. And I think when you do talk to a health coach, what you do initially is to sit there and make goals. Now, not goals in the traditional sense of goals where they become unreachable, and I'm gonna improve my health, I'm gonna lose 14 stone by next week, that kind of, it's not about that. It's looking at where you want to go, and then it's about exploring your lifestyle, exploring your environment. What can you change to make that goal happen? And as you go through the health coaching process, often those goals will change, because you think that you're going to be happy if you lose 4 stone. But actually, when you go through it, that's not what's making you unhappy. What's making you unhappy is something else that's going on in your life. And it's that you need to focus on, and that it's a moving feast, you know. So it's about exploring where you are, your environment, your lifestyle, and then looking at what's getting in your way of making the changes that you need to do, and then moving forward by putting new habits in place in small chunks.
So is the first step just being, you said, honest with yourself? Is it just accepting where you are?
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it. Yeah, you accept where you are. You accept that things aren't quite right. You know you need to make change. You might not know what the change is, but you know that you've got to look honestly at it and maybe get help.
Because I think that's where a lot of people struggle, don't they? They're not happy where they are.
Yeah.
And like you've said, you know, they're putting those barriers or excuses or
blame
on other things.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you can come back to, I hear an awful lot, I'll be happy when ...
Yes. Yeah.
And my always response of going, well, why can't you be happy today?
Yeah.
You know, why do you have to wait until you've achieved that?
Yeah.
For you to be happy?
Well, I know someone who needs to make changes to their health, but has said, "Oh, I can't yet because I've that's got to happen.
Okay.
I can't yet because I'm working on this, and I can't yet because I'm working on that."
Right.
But your health underpins everything. You know that when. At what point are you going to realise that the health is the thing that needs the action? Yeah.
How this could be a big question, of which I know. So how do we help people accept themselves?
I think it's about changing, reframing things, isn't it? So it's about changing the way that we talk to ourselves.
Okay.
And I think women are particularly bad at that, to be honest. I think I had one client who thought that she needed to improve herself all the time. That's what she did. Self-help books, loads of you know, courses, anything that she could get hold of, because she wanted to be better. But it was probably one of the most moving clients I've had, actually, that because after about 4 sessions, things shifted completely and it became very emotional. But that was because it was a realization that she didn't need to be anybody else. She didn't need to be better. She was perfect as she was, but she needed to accept herself and make changes in her life that would underpin the person that she is, you know?
Yeah.
So it's teaching people to accept themselves, but also helping them to be on a better, healthier path, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it is important, isn't it, that someone, and I think for me anyway, listening to what you're saying, you know, what resonates for me is that that's the environment of which a coach can help. Because, you know, sometimes when we, however we want to describe it, peel down the layers of the onion or whatever, actually what we're getting to is something, you know, we have this surface level issue that we are blaming or thinking is the problem. But actually once we start to, you know, let's lean into the name of the part, we unlock other parts of us.
Yeah, 100%.
We actually realise probably what is the root cause or the core of it. And I agree, I think, you know, that can be quite emotional part to be to, which obviously if it's an emotional, it can also add resistance, can't it? Because people can go, well, actually, I don't really want to go there. But, you know, the power of seeing people come to that realization, you know, selfishly as a coach, it's like one of those things when you see people have those moments, those light bulb moments, and you go, oh, someone's going on there, aren't they? And they're like, yeah, that's brought something up for me then. So I think they're really nice moments, and it, you know, it's helping people, isn't it, get to that point? Yeah. And would you say then getting to that point helps them, that long-term sustainable change? Because I know that's something you're really passionate about, aren't you? It's not just, you know, all right, eat a bit better or sleep a bit better. It's actually creating those healthier habits.
I don't think you can get to that long-term sustainable change until you've sort of found that core person or that core being that you are, because you've got to accept that, and you've got to accept the boundaries and the environment and everything around you, and make the changes that you need to within those things to be able to make long-term change. Because you've got to make it so that it works in your life.
Yeah.
So you've first got to unpack your life a little bit, I suppose, haven't you?
Yeah.
Because you've got to say, well, these are the things within my life. These are the things that aren't working. These are the things that are working. These are the things I can capitalize on because I know that they work in other areas. How can I bring these things that work really well in other areas into the areas that aren't working so well? Like, what skills do I have that are going to help these areas? And then you optimize your environment, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to say, because that was the bit that was resonating for me, thinking, once we've learned to accept, there's a, and I guess I'd gone to thinking, it's all of a sudden, if I'm in a family dynamics relationship, friend groups, whatever other relationships people have got in the world, and my habits are mirrored by others or accepted by others, and then I start to change, it's about then how do I, if I've started to learn to accept myself, how do we get other people to, or surround myself with people that are going to support me on my journey as well, aren't we? Which I think leans into the environment piece that you were saying.
100%. Because it's really difficult, isn't it? Because if you want to start eating healthily, but you've got a family that likes takeaways, or you're surrounded by people who are negative or who don't support your growth or your health journey, that's really, really difficult. And that's something that you then have to learn to navigate in a different way, because you're not going to change those people.
Yeah.
So you've got to place yourself within that world with a new understanding of your place in that world, and confidence to be yourself within that world, but be different. And I know my son's godfather, in fact, he didn't drink alcohol when he was at school,
right.
In the older years when they were all going out. And at first he got laughed at, he got the mickey taken, but eventually people accepted that was just who he was. He didn't want to drink alcohol, and he was just as much fun, and he was a great guy, and it wasn't something to be laughed at. And I think that you've got to have the confidence to just roll with the punches for a little while and just assert your place in that environment.
And I think so, and I think that happens in adults. I've got lots of friends of mine who don't drink, and if we're out on a night out and they are having a non-alcoholic beer, or what's the point of that? Or if they're having a glass of Coke or something, they're like, you're not even having one beer. There's almost the ridicule that rolls with it, don't you? And I think so, having that ability to, as you say, stay strong under the peer pressure of things. Yeah. And even when, I guess, if you are making healthier habits, healthier choices, and you're going out for meals, there is just have a night off, and that, there is external pressures that I think a lot of people do face, don't they, when they're...
Yeah, but it's amazing how people will, if you stick to it, how people will start to look at it differently too,
Yep.
And if you're in a restaurant and you say, oh, do you mind if I have that but without the sauce, and you start to bring different ways of making meals together, then people see that differently, and they stop eventually. It's not.
No, but I think that's what it is. But you've got to ride. You've got to
ride the storm.
You have, haven't you? And I think that's a really important that we talk about, because I think a lot of people start with good intentions, and again, I was just thinking, around that environment, that sometimes you can be really good, and I'm sure if they're working with you, they're in a really supportive space, and they've probably got support, but then moving into different environments. Yeah. The challenges are still out there, isn't it? And it's how we, and again, it's that piece of how we change ourselves and how we accept ourselves and comfortable who we are. So when we do go into those things, we are confident enough to turn around and go, oh, I'm cool with who I am. Yeah. And if I want my sauce on the side, I'm going to offer my sauce on the side. And you can have your sauce covered all over, whatever, but I'm cool with who I am.
Well, that's about identity, isn't it? That's about being the person. So instead of saying, I want to be a healthy person, you embody that. You say, I am a healthy person. And so it doesn't really matter what happens on the outside or what tries to knock you off your path. You are a healthy person. So therefore you do the actions of a healthy person, right? Yeah. It's the same with anything. If you identify as, I am a good dad, then you act as a good dad. Yeah. Right. It's true though. Yeah. You don't want to be a good dad.
Yeah, but again, and that, and you resonated with something that made me smile, and because I think that is certainly my definite identity, And it's also something that all the decisions I make through my lifestyle choices, my health choices, my work choices revolve around that.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm very comfortable. So how we even eat and cook at home, I see it as, yes, I enjoy to eat healthy. I'm prepared to sit and cook fresh and cook vegetables and all those kind of things. But subliminally, I'm hoping Isabel's looking and going, you know, everything, you know, we're not just getting, and there's nothing wrong with it if you want to get a sauce out of the cupboard. I choose to show that everything we made is fresh and we eat well, because I think it's important, especially because I spend my whole life telling people to make good choices. I think it'd be ironic at home if I wasn't doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, I take her to the gym. I train with her. She comes exercising with me because,
brilliant.
Again, one, and I will say this out loud, it's also accountability to me, because if I've worked all day and I'm tired and she comes home from school, won't we go in the gym? I can't go, oh no, I'm tired, I've had a tough day, I've got to go. Yeah. Oh God, she's keeping me accountable, which is helpful to me, but also, you know, she sees we're working out 2-3 times a week. So I'm hoping, and you can only hope, you know, by being that person, that some of those habits then rub off. But then when she goes to become an adult, you know, she makes smarter choices, more intelligent choices. She might not, and it all might backfire. And we're having a giggle about that in a few years' time on part 2 of this. But you know, and I think it's important because you know, hopefully we're building that environment around us, which you know, that only comes from myself and how hopefully I can influence others in my
of course. And the same thing applies to workplaces. You know, it's not just home. It's you're creating an environment in a workplace. Is that also helping people to be the best that they can possibly be, or is that stopping them from achieving their full potential? You know, it's exactly the same. So
kind of brilliant caveat into the next part of this pod. Brilliant. lovely, brilliant. Miles better than I would have done it. That was brilliant. Miles better than I would have done it. But on that, so, you know, I think we've covered some really good ground. I think some really nice things about, one, what health coach is and how we can obviously get the best out of ourselves and what we can do. And I think there's a lot about that. But then if you're, like, say, getting the best out of others, so work environments and stuff, I know that's a big part of what you do. So can you just explore that a little bit around this? Because I think it is that, isn't it? That, you know, I talk around my environment at home, but in a work situation, it's how do we encourage the people around us to make healthy habits? Because I want them to be, you know, for reasons, I want them to be optimal.
Yeah, of course.
Because I want them to be well. I want them, because if they're well and healthy, one part of me from a leader, I want them to turn up to work. Yeah. I want them to deliver the best service they possibly can. So I want to create an environment where they feel that they can eat healthy, they've got time to eat, they've got time to rest, they can have a drink, they can have a cup of tea or coffee when they need to have it. So in your experience of what you do, you know, what could people be potentially doing within a workplace, or how could we encourage some more?
I think living it and not just giving lip service to it is really important. I think workplace wellness is more than just, you know, a fruit bowl in the kitchen, or lunchtime awareness session. In fact, lunchtime sessions that almost says, you know, employee well-being isn't really important because we're doing it in your lunchtime.
Okay.
You know? That's quite an important shift.
Interesting.
It's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable, feel empowered, don't absorb the stresses, and if the stresses are becoming too much, then they have a pathway where they can go to manage that. And also, I think, you know, you don't stop being human when you go to work.
No.
You still, if you've got lack of sleep, stress at home, then that's going to come into the workplace with you. Well, how does that, is there any help for that in the workplace? Is there understanding of that in the workplace? Because ultimately that's going to affect performance, that's going to affect decision making, it's going to affect how you lead, right? So if you have a culture that says we're supportive, we'll do what we can to help, then I think that the person feels safer.
Yeah.
And when a person feels safe, then they are more likely to recover. But if they're then, you know, you've got to get this done, you've got to get this done. If there's more pressure put upon them, then they're going to really struggle to recover and make good decisions, really.
Oh, massively, because I think we've got to understand where people are. You know, if people listen to this, I don't know how many people they might have in their office, but if we don't understand where they're at, you know, they could have young kids that have kept them awake all night, so that, you know, they're going to arrive and they've probably had very little sleep or very disturbed sleep.
Yeah.
So we all know the power of sleep and the kind of the effects that can have. It might be, you know, just thinking of my own world and my own friends have got ill parents and you know, so at different, you know, for people might have kids at one end where they're like going, oh my God, keeping awake, but the other end they've got parents that they're, you know, they're finishing work and they're jotting off to see them, the parents, and making sure they're looking after them or keeping an eye on them, or, you know, worrying about them at night. There's lots of things, isn't there, that goes on that affects the way we turn up.
Because they call that the sandwich generation, right? That you've got kids on the one side and you've got elderly parents on the other, so you're in the middle and you're holding everything together. And I think for women in particular, that becomes a bit of a problem, because it also then coincides with the menopause often. And at that point where that happens, then you're trying to make changes in your life, or you're trying to get things done, but your body's fighting against you in some ways, because you're going through changes that are making things a lot harder to cope with. Stress becomes different. Stress actually impacts on the hormone, creates hormone imbalance, you know, or it adds to hormone imbalance, and the hormone imbalance fuels the stress. So you get a bit of a double whammy in midlife. So it's another thing that employers have to understand, that women are going to go through changes, and they're going to be going through difficulties. You know, they're going to get hot flushes, they're going to get brain fog, they're going to get things that can't just be managed out of them, if you like. There's got to be some awareness of that, and I think education within the workplace is really important, and doing workplace wellbeing sessions is really important, because it takes them through, you know, how do I cope with stress in the workplace? How do I cope with stress at home? How do I eat better for nutrition sake, so that, you know, in the afternoon I'm not running on empty, and I can feel like I can get through my day. You know, it's such a big area, but it's one that isn't yet being looked at necessarily.
Well, that was the question that was kind of resonating in my head, of where do we sit with this in your experience? Because where I was sitting, I think there's lots of stuff that's changed, isn't it? So there's the awareness piece. I think people are getting better, and I don't know if you'll challenge that or not, but certainly I would hope that, and I think sitting here as a male, we're more aware of it existing, especially, you know, and but also, as I understand it, and I'm certainly not going to get into this depth conversation, I'll let you take the lead on this, but certainly going into knowing that a lot of women that start with the symptoms are navigating their own, what's going on for me, what works for me, what, you know, and so they're almost having to relearn a different version to accept as well. If that...
Yeah, but often they don't know what's happening.
Well, that's I guess my point. They know there's a change. It might be, like you say, the brain fog thing of going, I don't feel as clear. So there's this misunderstanding of what's going on for them. Is it lack of sleep? Is it busyness? Is it hormonal change? Is it part of the world? But then there's the whole thing of going, okay, so what do I need to do differently to allow me to function a little bit better? It's trying to work that piece out. So it's navigating that piece. And then it's being comfortable with the environment. Keep comfortable with the environment that, you know, as an employer or a leader, that someone can have the confidence and belief to turn around and go, I don't know what's going on with me, but I feel less clear in this, you know. And so there's a level of understanding, because I think that clarity of conversation can be helpful, can't it? And then there's a trust of going, okay, well, if you're doing all you can, and when as an environment we're trying to create a supportive environment to allow you to find and navigate that. So I'm just curious then with that, is where do we, in your experience of the work you do, how good are we getting?
Awareness is there. Awareness is definitely there, but awareness is different to action, I suppose. So I think some companies are really trying now. Good. But I think there needs to be more. I think there needs to be, it's not a tick box. It's not, you know, we're doing wellness. As I said, you know, we've put a bit of fruit out, and we've, you know, I don't know, we've got yoga at lunchtime or something. I don't know. but it's much more than that. It's making the workforce feel empowered, I think, to be well and to feel confident at work that their health is being looked after.
Yeah.
And some companies do that really, really well, and people feel good in their environment, don't they? But there are so many companies that aren't yet doing that.
And does that align with then, if the company is attempting to do that, then the responsibility also comes down to the individual to take that as well, can't they? Did you understand? So if you're feeling less good, you could lean into it and say, well, I'm not working because I feel like this. But it comes back to that acceptance of who we are and taking responsibility for yourself as well. Do you know what I mean by that? So, and I'm not... No, okay, let me explain myself a bit better. Because I think, we can create an environment where we can support people, but still the person's got to take the responsibility to take the action, isn't it? It's all great saying, oh, I've got, I feel a bit brain fog, but the so what piece comes, okay, so what do we need to do to support you, and what actions are you going to take to support yourself?
100%, that's
all right, it's cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I know I was trying to say, I might articulate myself.
I think I probably have brain fog. No, I think that's absolutely right, but it comes down again to education.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So that person accepting that they have responsibility and agency and not blaming their environment, because I think, often disgruntled employees, people that aren't very happy in what they're doing, they will blame the environment.
Yeah.
And there's a balance again, isn't there, where they have to accept that they can also make changes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the word balance seems to always sit in a lot of these conversations, because I think we've got to, it's that we'll meet you halfway and we can give you all the tools to do, and then how do you do that? But I like the point of going, I think if we can create an environment as a leader or a business owner that people feel safe to do stuff, they are more likely then to kind of do that, aren't they? Whereas if there's an environment where you don't feel supported and safe.
But also, you know yourself, if you feel empowered, if you like a brand that really gives you what you need, and you really feel a loyalty to that brand, it's the same with workplace, right? If you feel that you're being looked after, if your human needs, look at Maslow's hierarchy, if you're getting looked at work in that kind of way, then you're going to feel a loyalty to that company, and you're less likely to go moving on because you're not feeling valued.
No,
so it's interesting, because you would think it would be a no-brainer that if you look after your employees, they're going to stay. But I think, businesses are busy running businesses. So it's not necessarily something that they can easily slot in, but it is something that they need to start to do a bit more consistently, I think.
I think so. And, and I probably don't spend as much time on this topic as you, so I'll sit from an outside observer looking in. Certainly from what I've seen, there's been a change, and I agree. I think people are becoming more aware of, that actually I think people becoming more, as leaders, becoming aware of we need to get better ourselves. And, certainly people on this podcast have said to us that, strong leaders have got to like 50, and they have been males, let's put it out there, that have said, and I've got to 50 and realised actually I'm not as fit as I should be, my lifestyle isn't really good, so I need to now optimise myself. But what that's then is then they've looked at themselves and gone, hold on a minute, I need to be incorporating these further down the lines. Well, what we're saying, going back to where we started this conversation, we can actually be proactive from the back. We don't have to, if you're a leader listening to this, you don't have to get to the point of you getting stressed and unwell for you to think, I can be proactive in myself. But also, if I apply that same lens to my team, and how do I create a proactive, and how do I support each and every person in my organisation, and how can I help support them feel optimal, then there is an element where that loyalty and how people turn up to work is going to be better as well, isn't it?
Of course. And also, you think about what that does for a team as well.
Massively.
If you're all singing from the same hymn sheet, you're all in that supportive environment, you're all feeling the need to look after each other's health, create an environment where people feel safe and supported, then your team cohesion is better.
We talk a lot about in organisations that psychological safety part of what we develop. And I think it's very easy to put lip service to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that you were saying before.
Yeah.
But actually, an action is if we're actually actioning and we're actually looking at going, okay, so what truly will make you all feel optimal at work? That is a really good action point to say, actually, they do care about us. So therefore, you know, the cohesion is better, isn't it? Because that environment, that culture comes from it.
Yeah, 100%.
I love it. Before we start moving into advice for the listeners, is there anything that regarding either optimizing ourselves or optimizing team that we haven't really covered that you feel is appropriate?
Oh, now I'm on
you
the
can't
spot.
say no.
No, my brain has just shut down. As soon as you started to speak, my brain shut down.
I do that to a lot of people. Don't worry about it.
If there is, it'll come to me in a
perfect.
second.
Okay. Because I'm conscious that, look, I mean, this... I'm conscious of our listeners that, you know, we've promised them an hour podcast, and I don't, you know, there's about 42,000 questions that I've got that I'd love to delve into. So there could be definitely, but no, I think it's a part 2, if I'm honest with you, because there's lots of things I'd like to explore. I think if we could just start to put it in for listeners to wrap it up, if there were kind of 3 practical things that we, you know, and it might be those small little steps that you talked about at the start that we think listeners could begin with, what would some of those 3 things be?
Well, I knew you were going to ask this, so I did have a bit of a think about it. But I think it's, you know, we talked about being honest earlier and having a really honest check-in with yourself and saying, how am I? But that's not just how am I, it's how am I really, isn't it? It's how am I really? Actually, you know, what's going on with me? And not how I'm performing, but how am I actually doing? And what can I change about what I'm doing if it's not working the way that I want it to? So another thing that you can do is choose a habit that would make the most difference and something that you can repeat on every day, and an every day of normal life, not every day of some beautiful imaginary life that you think you might lead, but on a normal day that you're leading. What change can you repeat? Because it's only habits that are repeatable that will make the change. You know, you know really well, and you've got to make it small enough that you'll genuinely enjoy doing it. Because if you make it too big, you're not going to carry on. But if you make it small enough, you'll carry it on. You can build on it. You've got to standardize it before you can optimize it. So soon as that's not me, that's James Clear. I don't mind.
we're keeping that in. No, that's good.
It's so good. I think it's so brilliant because you can't just go, you know, we do have these huge, ugly messages that we say to ourselves. I'm going to be healthy. It's too big. And you can't get to that optimal. You can't get to that optimized outcome until you've standardized the little steps that you need to take. So you take one step, you do it well, you build on it, you build on it, you build on it, and soon you're running a marathon, you know?
I can't ever see me running a marathon, but I'm with you. I know the analogy. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah. My thing of that is if you're trying to get steps in, just get a Labrador. Oh. Because you've got no choice but.
And they'll eat everything in the fridge as well.
Well, there's a little bit of that, but someone always said to me when we were talking about getting steps in, and they were like, oh, I will struggle to get my steps in. I went, oh, not a problem. I said, I could fix that really, really quickly. And they went, oh, how would you do that? I went, I'll lend you my dog. And I went, because twice a day, every single day, when you're out pounding the streets, you'll definitely eat 10,000 steps in. They're like, all right. Yeah, but they come with an awful lot of other responsibility rather than the walk. So, no, I get that. No, I like that, and I think it is nice that standardised to optimise. I think that, you know, James Clear may have said it, but you articulated it very well. So I think we can give you some credit for that as well. Oh, nice. Any other practical things that I know you were quite prepped for this before I move on?
I've got loads. Well,
give us one more. What would one more be?
I think if life feels out of control, then start with one thing that will help you feel more in charge of your next choice. So life does, you know, it does throw us curveballs, and sometimes we can feel really overwhelmed. You can't change all that, but you can start to bring that control back. Make one choice, that one change that will make you feel more in charge of what happens next, of your next choice. So I think all of it can be summarized in terms of breaking things down into small parts. You know, you can't eat an elephant all in one go, can you? You've got to break it down into small chunks, and it's the same with change. And I think what health coaching does is help people move from the knowledge that they have to making those changes. It's bridging that knowledge gap, and it's by helping them make small changes, start new habits, but in a way that's manageable, in a way that's repeatable and doable.
Love that. What's one principle you wish every leader understood?
That you can't separate well-being from performance for very long.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because people will be stressed and people will function whilst they're stressed. That's a fact, because we've all done it.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
But there will be a point where the stress overtakes them. So, and at that point, performance will suffer. So if you're not looking after your employees' well-being, then what you talked about earlier, the performance, their ability to show up for work will suffer, and then your company suffers. So you can't separate well-being from performance. You just can't.
I think that's such an important message. I'm glad you've made it, because you articulated a lot better than I would have. So just thinking about, you know, there's been quite a lot of depth this conversation, and I think there's loads of insights that certainly when I listen back will resonate a lot with me, and a lot of the, you know, I think we're very aligned in how we view the world. That's the compliment, by the way. I don't know if you take that the same way. Yeah, I always play that out. So, you know, thinking about action, I know we've talked around some, but if we had to take some of these insight into action, again, what could we encourage other people to be doing, or people listening to do with some of these things? Is there anything else that kind of resonates with?
I think it's don't be hard on yourself. You know, you are human, and you've got to be gentle with yourself. You've got you can't just overhaul everything. You know, you've got to go back to the basics and look at what you can change gently, because that's the only way that it's going to work over the long term. Just be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, and stop the negative self-talk. So reframe things, not, you know, why is this happening to me, but what can I do to change this? So maybe start there. Maybe start by reframing the talk that you tell yourself.
My addition to that, I would say, and if you are listening to this and feel that, all right, well, that's easier said than done, then maybe that leads to my next question of where people can find you.
Oh, love that segue. That's very good. So I can be found at wellhealth.uk.
Yeah.
I can be found on social media.
We will put all these links in the notes as well.
Yeah. And so I offer one-to-one sessions, group programs, and workplace wellbeing.
Nice. And what are you working on next? What can people be looking out for the work you're doing?
I've got a group program running in Clitheroe.
Awesome.
Starting next week.
Okay.
And then we'll be opening up some more online group programs as well, which are really good because there's accountability, there's support.
Nice.
There's people that are at the same stage of life and understand the pressures. So it's a really supportive, safe space.
Perfect. So again, once those links are in, if you want to share them, and we can share them. Is there one final challenge you'd like to set our audience? I know. We love setting action and challenges on this pod. Yeah. Follow me. Join my group.
Yes. I've got a Facebook group. You can join the Facebook group,
okay.
Which is the Midlife Health Reset, I think. So that is that's my framework, is the Midlife Reset. And
awesome.
Yes.
That's so it doesn't beep because Nick will go mad at me, so don't worry. So, well, listen, it's been lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I really
thank
appreciate
you, Andy. I've enjoyed it.
I really, really appreciate a conversation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andy.
It's been lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.